Hello, everyone. How are you? I am Violet Lee, your Tai Chi examiner. As you probably know, that I have written articles, more than 700 articles in since 2009. Yes, about 15 years. And I have met so many people in this field, scientists, grandmasters, experts, and practitioners. Yes, there are a lot of interesting people, and many of them are just unbelievable. But among all the people I have talked with, and I found that Dr. John Painter is a very, very unique individual. And his life journey is fascinating. Yes. I first knew John, it was about 10 years ago at Tai Chi Gala. We both were instructors there. And throughout the years, and I found so many things John have accomplished. About a few months ago, I was talking to John, and finally I said, John, did Hollywood ever approach you and to do a movie about you? And John just chuckled, said, "You crazy? No." And then, it just came out of my brain all of a sudden. Then after I say that, I kept thinking, his stories are so incredible. And John is 79 now, and he may want to fully retire, and then I will lose the opportunity and then to understand what he has done in his life. And so about 2 months ago, again, I shocked John. I said, "Hey, John, I'm going to do a series of your stories. Would you mind spend some time with me and talk to me about your life?" John thought about it, and then he said, "Okay." And so I will do a series of interviews with him, and each one will not be too long, maybe 30 minutes. And I think you will be fascinated by his stories, just like I have been. Okay. And without further ado, and now I want to bring John into the studio, and so we can start talking about his life. Looks like he's coming in. Yes, very good. And there's a little bit delayed with the way Zoom works. Okay. And okay, John. And John's, I guess, still coming soon, hopefully soon. And okay. Hey, John, welcome, Dr. Painter. And really, really glad you made the time for us. And so we're going to talk about your life. And we can go different ways, and we can talk chronologically. I thought, there's a lot of interesting things happen throughout your life. But as journalist, and I'm always trying to find that special focus or topic to talk about it. Okay, so many people, they stumble upon the healing art of Tai Chi Chuan, Qigong, or the internal martial art, different ways. And your story, and it's very, very interesting, and at least to me. And would you mind and tell me and or tell everyone and your story? How did you get started?
Okay,
good.
Now you got me. I had to unmute myself. My wife would like to mute me permanently, probably. My wife says that the Beatles song is appropriate, the one called The Long and Winding Road. It's been a very long and winding situation, but you wanted to know about the first things that I got involved with in learning the Chinese internal arts. When I started this way back around 1957, there was nothing in the United States really that was in print or anywhere, especially not in East Texas, that had to do anything with the Chinese martial arts or even hardly the Korean martial arts or any of them. But I was a sickly little kid, and the doctors told my parents I might not live to be older than about 14 because I had an immune deficiency. And there were other things that they didn't really understand how to diagnose in those days. So I was lying kind of sick in my bed one night, and it was full moon outside. And I had a window that I could look out and see the neighbor's backyard and my backyard. So I was looking out the window, excuse me. And all of a sudden, I saw what looked like a ghost in the yard next door, walking around and around and around and waving its arms up and down and doing stuff.
A ghost.
And I freaked out. Yeah, woo! It was like, oh my God. And I hid under the covers, you know. So the next night, I decided to watch again. And I got a pencil and sharpened it for a stake. And I had my daddy's crucifix. He was a Catholic, and put it all in the bed just in case this was a vampire or whatever. I didn't know. And there it was again, walking around and around this tree and walking all over the backyard and waving its arms. Well, I freaked out and went and told my dad. I said, Dad, there's something weird going on next door. There's this thing in a white robe going round and round in circles. And he said, oh, that's probably old Mr. Lee, Frank Lee. They just moved here. We helped them get the house next door. And I said, well, he's really weird. I don't, if that's a man, it's just freaking me out, you know? So Dad said, no, it's okay. It's okay. You know, he's a nice guy. He's very friendly. He was a soldier in China, and he's okay. I said, well, whatever. So I kept watching him out the window at night, and I had no idea he was walking the circle and doing Bagwadzang. Not at that time. I didn't have a clue what he was doing. That's what he was doing. Yeah, late at night and going around in circles and doing all this stuff.
Yes.
And so I thought, wow, this is very, very strange. And my dad and mom were big football fans. They would go every year to the Texas-Oklahoma University football playoff in Dallas, Texas, because my dad played football for the University of Texas back when they had leather helmets. You know, that's a long time ago. Oh, yeah, long time ago. Yeah. So they would go every year, and sometime we would have this people come and they would stay with my sister and I. And one day Dad comes in, he says, we're going to Dallas for the football game. I said, well, is Anna coming? Anna Brooks was this woman that came and stayed with us. And he said, no, she couldn't come. So I asked old Mr. Lee if he would come over and, what? I said, I asked old Mr. Lee if he would come over and watch over you guys. I said, are you kidding me? See, you need to understand in the 1950s in East Texas, sometimes there were Black people and there were some Mexican people, but there were no Oriental people at all. Not that we knew anyway. And so I was a little, you know, I didn't know who this guy was. So I'm laying in the bed. I had a fever, and the door opens like in a horror movie. Like this, you know. And this little guy comes in. He's about 5'7", maybe 6, I don't know. And maybe weighed 160 pounds, dripping wet. He was wearing a Pendleton shirt, you know, one of those plaid shirts, and khaki pants and boat shoes. And the covers are up like this, you know, I'm scared. And he comes over and he says, you named Biff? I said, yeah. And he says, I look. I said, you look what? And he pulls the cover down and he takes hold of my wrist like this on this side and the other one on this side. And he just sits there.
is he doing?
I said, what are you doing? He said, I feel your pulse. He was taking my 12 acupuncture pulses. That's what he was doing. Turns out he was what they call in China. Yeah. In China, they call these people barefoot doctors. So he was looking at my pulse and he says, you'll be okay. I fix. I said, yeah, whatever. You know, I was trying to get him out of the room because I thought he was nutty. He said, let's see tongue. So he says, oh, okay. He looks at my tongue. Then he says, I'll be back. He goes out, comes back in about 45 minutes later with his big bowl of hot broth, some kind of soup. He says, you eat to this. You eat to this. I said, okay. Now I want to tell you, the silly voice I'm doing is because it keeps him alive in my memory. So I'm not making fun of anybody. That's the way he sounds in my head when I think about him. He says, you eat to this. And then you make sure you're not to eat any more cow. I said, don't eat any more cow? Yes, you eat a chicken. I said, eat chicken. Yes, no cow, just a chicken. I said, okay. And maybe vegetables. I said, okay, all right, fine. You know, so he goes out and he stayed there and watched over us for a while. And I thought he was out of his mind, you know. So I'm thinking, you know, what does he mean not eat cow? Not, you know, why am I not supposed to eat a cow? Well, come to find out that I inherited a form of biochemical depression from my mother's side of the family, where the amino acids in red meat exacerbate the depression and help lower a person in my position's immune system.
Oh, wow.
And chicken contains tryptophan and other amino acids that reverse that process. How he knew that, I can't tell you. I don't know. But I started trying to listen to what he said, and I started trying to do that, you know, and so on. So I started asking my dad about this guy a little bit more when they got back. And he said, you know, he was a soldier in Chiang Kai-shek's army. He and his father, Li Zhonglai, who is gone now, were soldiers, and they trained some of the military people and also kind of worked as barefoot doctors there. My dad didn't know the term barefoot doctors, but that's what he said, doctors. And I said, wow, that's very interesting. So my pants are out and I hear a knock on the door. I go to the door and it's Mr. Lee standing there. He says, you come next door. I said, okay. It's in the afternoon. And I go over to his house in the backyard. He's got a driveway that went up to a garage door that opened in the front, but it also opened in the back. And he had all this weird equipment inside the garage, hanging bags and stuff. And when he put the garage door down, there's a great big Taiji Chuan symbol on the back door. He painted on there. I didn't know what that was. He says, you get to better. I show you how to do exercise to get to better. I said, okay, that's fine. So he says, come with me. So I go with him and we go over, and I'll show you a picture in a minute of the tree itself. And he says, you stand here like this. And he puts his hands down by his side and takes a deep breath. He says, you look at the tree, look very hard at the tree and relax, just to relax. I said, okay, I'm waiting for the next thing, you know, the next exercise. I look around and he's gone. And I'm standing there like an idiot staring at this big giant pine tree. And I hear him. He's inside his screened in porch reading a newspaper and drinking tea. And he says, you keep a look at the tree. I said, you're out of your mind. I left. I went back home. So I'm thinking, boy, this is real weirdo living next door. So he comes back over and knocks on my door again. Okay. I said, oh no. So he comes out and I said, what is it this time? He says, I show you something. I said, well, okay. So I go
Another
over and on his
tree?
back, yeah, no, I sit on his back steps. He had piled up like 4 building bricks. Now, these are not the modern kind. These are the old kind that are solid. There were 4 of them.
Okay.
And they were just laying on the concrete on his back porch. He says, you look at this. Okay. 4 bricks, big deal. He puts his hand about, that high above the bricks, takes a
Okay.
deep breath. He says, you pick one. I said, pick one what? One of the 4. Okay, so I picked the one in the middle. And he goes, like this. The brick in the middle broke in pieces.
So you did not take the brick out. You just point us which one.
Yeah, just picked out one, and that one broke. And then he swiped that away and did it again, and they all broke. And I went, oh my goodness. How did you do that? He said, oh, very hard.
He's a ghost. He's a ghost.
Very
he can
hard.
do it.
I said, what do I have to do? Lift weights, get strong, what? And he says, no, you'll go look at the tree.
Whoa.
So that was my first. That at a young 14 or 15-year-old boy, when you see a little skinny man hit 4 bricks and break them like a sledgehammer, you'll do anything that guy says from that point on. So I went and looked at the freaking tree and held all the different postures he showed me and everything else. My parents
So
didn't
that's
quite know what was going on.
That's
Huh?
your 站桩, the
Yeah.
standing post. Yeah.
Yes,
and
yeah,
with the tree energy.
the jamjong, yes. And I was supposed to be pulling energy from the tree as well.
Yes.
The tree was
yes,
supposed to be
that's
giving me energy. And I was barefooted. So I know now a lot of the things that's the reason why that happened, but back then I didn't have a clue. My parents then took me back to the doctors in Shreveport, Louisiana, that were my main doctors that were watching over me. And they did all these examinations, and they told my mom, he seems to be getting better. His immune system is perking up. So what's he doing? And my mother says, I don't know. He's talking to this old Chinese guy next door, and he's showing him some kind of exercise. And the doctor says, I don't care what it is. Tell him to keep doing it. And so I did, and I stayed with him.
Whoa.
And that's how I looked at the tree.
That's the tree. So the tree saved your life.
Well, I guess so, yes. I think Mr. Lee making me look at the tree saved my life. Yes, yes.
So he just have you look at the tree, and did he actually teach you any Chinese healing art or martial art?
Well, first I had to look at the tree, and I had to keep doing that until I could stand in the different postures and not have any tension in the arms or body any more than it would take to just hold them there. So that was the first thing. And then he said, okay, now we start to walk around the tree. I said, this is what you're doing late at night, right? Yes, you do too. I said, okay. So he didn't say anything. He just showed me a certain way to breathe, which is what we call postnatal breath. And he showed me a way to breathe. And then he said, now you walk, you look into the tree, you twist like this, you look in and you hold this and let the tree come into here, laogong, like this.
Palace.
And then you go round and round like that. So I would go round 9 times, turn around, go round 9 times the other way. And I had to keep doing that for over a month. But of course, I wanted to break those bricks. So I figured if I did this, maybe I could break the bricks. Okay. And so pretty soon he says, we have somebody have to help also. You have a friend. And I said, yeah. He said, okay, who is it? I said, his name is Robert. Okay. He said, so we get to Robert to come over too. And maybe the other boy, the redheaded boy down the street, there was a guy named Steve. So the 2 other boys came over and he started showing us martial art ideas. and things. We didn't know what he was talking about, but he would laugh all the time. He would say, "Okay, you attacking me." "What do you mean attack you?" "Okay, you punching me, kicking me, come at me." Okay, so we'd run at him and we'd all end up on the ground, all three of
So
us,
all three of you simultaneously
all at the same time.
get on him.
Yes, yes,
Whoa.
yes. He would be behind us and beside us before we even knew what we were doing. I mean, this guy must have been in his 70s at least at that time. And he was, he's small, but boy, he was wiry and strong. And we ended up a lot on the ground. So we wanted to learn what he was teaching. Unfortunately, Steve got kind of ill and moved away and ended up dying. So he didn't stay, but Robert did. And Robert and I would start off with what he considered was the best thing for us to learn first. Now, we didn't really learn Bagua Zhang. I just had to do my Qigong Bagua walking around the tree. We started with Xing Yi Chuan, the 5-element fist method. That was the first thing we learned. It has 5, very basic movements. We used them for fighting. I want to say here, Violet, that this teacher was not a martial arts teacher like you would see in a regular martial arts school today. He had trained soldiers in the military. He and his father had been bodyguards or bao biao on the Silk Road earlier on. And they used all kinds of weapons. They used all kinds of martial tactics and techniques. In fact, he had smuggled over his pistol that he had used in Chiang Kai-shek's army and later as a bodyguard. And it's a famous pistol. It's very old, but it's a broom-handled Mauser pistol, and there it is.
Oh my God.
That's
So
Mr. Lee's
smuggled into the U.S.?
7.63 millimeter Mauser pistol. The bullet from this thing will go through a vest, a protective vest, like knife through butter. And this is what they used, he and his father. I have the other one, and the barrel is about twice this long, and it has a stock that fits on it like a rifle.
The same one, or this is?
No, this is the same one. Yeah, this is over 100 years old.
That was his gun.
Yeah, that was his pistol.
Gave you?
He left it with me when he left. Yes, he left them with me. He taught us how to shoot. We didn't go shoot this, but we went out. He carved out of wood and stuff. He carved out replicas of this pistol, and he taught us how to draw them and shoot them and turn them and reload them and so on and so forth. So that was part of our kung fu training, if you want to call it that. Not only that, but knives, how to fight with knives. He taught us all this stuff he taught the military. So we're like 15, 16, 17-year-old boys learning how to be military soldiers, basically. And that's who he was. He wasn't all, lovey-dovey and everything's wonderful kind of thing. He was saying you need to learn how to defend yourself and be powerful in life. And that was what he was like.
But, you were still a teenager, and and Bobby still a teenager.
Yes.
And once you learn all these martial art techniques, and isn't that dangerous?
Yes.
Did you go fight in the neighborhood?
Not very often. He kept telling us not to fight anybody. He said only if somebody corner you and you cannot get back, you cannot get out, then you can defend yourself. There was no sport martial arts in those days at all. I mean, it didn't exist. There was boxing, Western boxing, but there was no karate tournaments or anything of that nature. So there was a bully in the neighborhood, and his name was Johnny. He was a big, heavy-set guy, and he would come and try to catch us as we'd get off the bus from school or whatever, and try to beat us up or do whatever he needed to do to make himself feel better. I think he had a bad home with bad parents, but I didn't know that. So one day, Johnny started chasing me down the street, And I ran in the house and shut the door. And my mother opened the door and pushed me back outside and said, take care of your own problems. Don't hide. So I went out to face Johnny, and he hit me pretty good. He hurt me. So he left. Next time he starts chasing me again. I went in the backyard and ran over to Mr. Lee's house. And Johnny didn't find me. Mr. Lee comes out. He says, what you do here? I said, well, that guy's chasing me and he's trying to beat me up. He hurts people in the neighborhood. Mr. Lee says, he's not a nice person. I said, no, not at all. I said, I'm going to go use my chuan fa. That was fist art. That's what we called what you call kung fu today. I'll use chuan fa on him. He said, oh, okay. Okay. So I'm going to the gate. I open the gate and he says, by the way, Biff. Yeah.
So
you must
Biff
have killed
is
him.
another name of you.
Biff is
right?
my nickname.
Your
yes.
nickname. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. It's on my birth certificate, but it's my nickname.
Okay.
He says, okay, Mr. Biff, you go find him. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and find him. He says, okay, you kill him. I says, what? Yes, you must have killed him. Kill him? Yes. What's the problem? I said, well, he said, I don't want to kill him. He said, then not to fight. I said, okay, well, then I guess I'll have to, maybe I still need to teach him a lesson. I walked about 10 more paces and he says, by the way, after you kill him, if he have brother, sister, mama, father, you kill all of them too. Then nobody come back for you. I'm like,
was he joking or no?
Well, yes and no. It took me a while to realize what he was saying because I was too young to understand what he was actually saying. What he was saying was, if it's not that serious, don't do it. In other words, leave it alone. Let it go away. So he thought that the only reason to actually involve yourself in a serious conflict was to make sure you went home and the other fellow didn't. And if it wasn't that serious, don't fool with it. Just walk away. Don't be worried about being called a coward or anything else. Just walk away. And that was his attitude. And
did you really teach that guy a lesson or
no,
not at all?
No, I actually saw him at school one day and I said, I know you keep wanting to fight me and there's no reason to. We could be friends. And let me buy you a Coke or something, and he nasty look. I said, well, he was always sitting by himself. So I'd go sit with him at the table, in the cafeteria. And after a while, we got to be pretty good friends. So I'm glad I didn't go try.
If you are not afraid of him, and
yes,
then there's nothing he can gain on you, right?
Exactly.
So you did not have to actually using a physical force to fight him, and but the courage alone and shows you have something. If he is really taking action against you, you will be able to defend yourself. I guess that's a very powerful message. And
it is. And I realized that Violet, that after we got to know each other, I realized that his mom and dad were not getting along and that his dad beat him. So that was one of the reasons why he went off and would hurt other people, trying to get revenge on his father, in a strange kind of way. So, yeah. So that was a good lesson. But of course, then in high school, after I learned a little more from Mr. Lee about golden bell cover and some other things, I had a really interesting guy who was named Eugene Deloach, who was a big bad guy. He fought everybody and everything. And I was in the cafeteria one day and he walked up to me and just punched me in the jaw as fast and hard as he could. And luckily I saw it coming. So I just turned my head and it kind of glanced off. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, is that all you got? he said, that didn't hurt? I said, no. You want to try it again? He says, no, let's go get something to eat. So that was another way of dealing with a situation, because I had learned how to take blows and so on in my body that didn't really hurt unless they were super, super hard, you know.
Well,
So
it's, I mean, your life story and really, how should I say, made me think about the Chinese character for martial art. The martial art or Wu is called Wu.
yeah,
Wu.
ooh, yeah,
That
yeah.
character actually was consists of two parts. That Chinese character. One is like with a weapon, and one is a stop. So the
Mm-hmm,
way
mm-hmm.
you accomplish actually is not using it,
Yeah, it means stop
right?
aggression.
Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so cool. I did not know I would learn this from you, and I thought you were just going to tell me how you actually, you know, started your internal martial arts journey. And this is fascinating, John. And again, I cannot thank you enough and willing to do this series of chatting or interviews with me. I really, really appreciate it. And as I mentioned, we don't want to do it too long, right? To bore everybody.
No,
No, nobody will be bored to death. It's so interesting. But we will continue, and we will do more dialogue later on. So, anything to say before we say goodbye to the audience?
no, I feel humbled and very appreciative that you wanted to put some of this stuff out there, and that you wanted to take the time to deal with me. I'm coming, like I said, into the winter of my life. So I'll be 80 next year. And it's nice to have these things put out there. I mean, Mr. Lee eventually named me his Ji Ching, or his inheritor of the system.
Yes.
And I have the letter, which I'll show you. Um, and I've taken that to heart. So I actually stopped my career in show business when I decided to open the Kung Fu Dao Training Center back in October the 3rd of 1972. And that was actually before the Kung Fu TV show came on. You know, that was on October 14th. It came out right after that, which didn't hurt enrollment at all.
Yeah.
So that's where we
Okay.
started.
Well,
And
that's
thank you so much for letting me do this. Yeah.
okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.